Blue Lantern restaurant glowed packed on a busy weekend night. Daniel Ross, 38, the single dad, waited for his blind date. The door swung open and every table turned. A young woman stepped in, dressed to worn shoes, cake in mud, hair matted. Emma Carter, 26, a waiter, almost blocked her, mistaking her for a vagrant. Laughter interrupted. She ran straight from the farm to the date. Emma's face burned scarlet, trembling with shame. Daniel stood up instantly. He stripped off his tailored coat, placed it gently over her shoulders. "You made it here to me. That's all that matters." The restaurant fell silent. No one expected that response. Emma Carter resided in a cheap rental district, her world defined by exhausting double shifts, serving coffee at a local cafe during the day and cleaning hotel rooms late into the night. She couldn't afford a car. The bus was her only connection to the outside world, a lifeline often unreliable and always crowded. The bus journey had been a nightmare, the air thick with damp clothing and weary humanity. The fall was a sea. Cruel joke played by fate. She hadn't just gotten wet, she had been thoroughly contaminated by the city's grime. Her cheap sequin dress, the only one she felt was appropriate, was now a muddy casualty. Her hands were scrap straw and her simple borrowed shoes were cake solid with mud. She was a mess, a failure. She could have gone home. Every fiber of her being screamed at her to retreat, to hide her shame, to curl up and cry, but she couldn't. She had promised, she had convinced herself that keeping this one promise, this small chance at normality, was vital. Old wounds inflicted by privileged schoolmates whispered the same old poison. Poor people don't deserve love. Emma didn't expect grand romance. She only hoped the evening wouldn't be an utter catastrophe. When she stumbled into the luxurious ambience of the Blue Lantern, the effect was immediate and crushing. Every eye was a needle piercing deep into the core of her insecurity. The ambient chatter died, replaced by a sudden harsh silence, followed by the cruel open mockery. She fell small, exposed and utterly undeserving of the polished marble and crystal chandeliers. Then she saw him, Daniel. He stood up immediately, not slowly, not hesitantly, but instantly. He moved toward her like a man walking into a fire to save someone precious. He didn't look at the mud, the torn fabric, or the scraps on her hands. His warm hazel eyes locked directly onto hers in an oasis of calm and genuine concern in the desert of her humiliation. Daniel, a man who built his life on reliable, steadfast things, was instantly calculating the scene. Her fear was genuine, her efforts profound. He saw a person fighting a battle, not a stain on a carpet. She tried to speak, her voice a pathetic, choked squeak. "I'm so sorry, I'm late," and Daniel cut her off, his voice warm, a rare masculine warmth she had never experienced. It was completely devoid of judgment, only offering profound acceptance. "Thank you for coming. You tried your best and you made it." His voice didn't waver. It was a clear, strong tone that cut through the residual snickers of tea. He gently took his tailored coat, a jacket that probably cost more than her entire month's rent, and draped it over her trembling shoulders. It was a gesture of protection, shielding her from the cruel world. As Emma, eyes downcast, took a step toward the table, she overheard a wealthy woman at a nearby table whisper acidly to her friend, "The joke of the evening, truly a disaster of a match." Daniel heard it too. He paused, placing a steadying hand on Emma's back, and turned. His expression was calm, but his eyes held an unnerving sharpness that cut through the restaurant's noise. "No one here has the right to diminish another person," he stated, his voice carrying just enough authority to silence the gossip. Emma froze. Never in her entire life of fighting tooth and nail had anyone, a stranger no less, stood up to protect her. A powerful tremor of shock ran through her. Daniel then turned back to her, offering a gentle smile that erased the moment of cold confrontation. He pulled out her chair and with meticulous care he quickly moved the pristine white linen napkin from the setting and used it to gently wipe the smallest particles of mud that had fallen near her seat. The shame threatened to consume her. She was so afraid of dirtying the exquisite surroundings. "Please sit," he instructed, his voice soothing. "The mud is just earth, but you're the person I wanted to talk to tonight. Please just relax." The waiter, instructed by Daniel, brought a bowl of warm lemon-scented water and a fresh towel. Daniel didn't just point. He knelt down beside her chair, completely ignoring the curious, gawking crowd. He gently took her hands, his touch reverent, and began to carefully wipe away the grime and mud from her scrapped knuckles. His head was bowed in a gesture of humble servitude. He looked up, his voice barely a whisper, thick with empathy. "May I help you?" She simply nodded, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. The shame was gone, replaced by a devastating, beautiful sense of being seen. Emma felt a strange dual emotion, profound embarrassment mixed with an intense unfamiliar rush of feeling cared for. Her whole life she had been defined by what she lacked. Now she was being defined by a man's tenderness. Daniel, sensing her continued discomfort, did not order the restaurant's famous lobster thermidor or the costly wine. He chose simple, comforting dishes of classic pasta and a garden salad to signal to Emma that this was about connection, not pretension. He made sure the conversation flowed easily, focusing on light topics, allowing her breathing room. She recounted the accident, hesitantly explaining she had fallen because she swerved to avoid hitting a small child chasing a runaway soccer ball. Daniel broke into a kind, gentle laugh. So you got covered in mud because you were being kind and selfless? Emma blushed deeply. No, I just didn't want the child to get hurt. That, Daniel countered, his eyes twinkling with genuine admiration, is the definition of kindness. Emma, you protected a stranger's child even at the cost of your own comfort and pride. Just as the waiter delivered their water, the Murmurs from the next table started again. I bet she doesn't even know how to use the fish fork. One woman scoffed loud enough to ensure they heard. Daniel set his glass down sharply, the sound echoing in the momentarily quiet space. He looked directly at the offending table, his jaw set. If you cannot show respect to this woman at my table, I will request that your party be moved, he stated, his voice low, firm, and carrying the unmistakable weight of a man who rarely issues threats but always follows through. The entire group went silent, utterly intimidated by his unexpected ferocity. Emma stared at him, her heart pounding. You did that for me. Daniel smiled, a complex expression of sadness and resolution. I did it because I know what it feels like to be the judge and looked down upon in front of someone you care about. He hesitated, then added, it's happened to me with my daughter. People assume a single father must be inadequate, or that my Lily is somehow lacking because she only has one parent. I learned long ago to choose my battles and protect my own. You have a child? Emma asked, surprised but not deterred. Daniel nodded warmly. Lily, she's 7, strong-willed, funny, and absolutely wonderful. You would definitely like her. That simple statement, you would definitely like her, sent a tremor of dizzying emotion through Emma's heart. It wasn't just an invitation, it was an affirmation. He spoke as if she already held a valued, permanent place in his potential life, a person worthy of meeting, his most treasured human being. Bullied by his attention, Emma started talking about herself, truly opening up for the first time in years. She spoke of her 3 desperate jobs, the countless failures and rejections, and the painful truth of her deferred dream, studying fashion design. The dream was expensive, impractical, and terrifying, so she kept it locked away. I see the colors in my head, Daniel, she confessed, her voice thick with sudden passion, but I don't see the runway, I only see the bills. Daniel listened intently, leaning in, not interrupting, not checking his phone, not showing a single sign of boredom. He absorbed every word, every nuance of her struggle, making her feel like the single most important, fascinating person in the room. His gaze was a velvet cloth polishing the tarnished edges of her self-worth. He recognized the familiar ache of a shelved ambition. His late wife Sarah had postponed her dream of opening her own architectural firm for years, prioritizing his career and Lily's arrival until her time ran out. Watching Emma speak about textiles and patterns with such desperate fire, Daniel felt an intense protective urge. This was not just a date, this was a second chance to support a powerful, beautiful dream. He realized that the mud was inconsequential. This woman, with her passion and her struggle, was the kind of person who could rebuild a foundation, who could bring color back into their disciplined, quiet life. He silently vowed not just to date her but to invest in her future. Then it was his turn. Daniel spoke quietly about his late wife, the love they shared, and the sudden, devastating vacuum her passing had left. He described the arduous, often lonely journey of becoming a single father, learning to braid hair while managing a demanding job and making up bedtime stories to fill the silence. Grief teaches you what true exhaustion is, he murmured, but Lily is the reason the sun keeps rising. She is my strength and my vulnerability. Emma gazed at him, her eyes filled with profound respect and empathy. She saw the true weight of his strength, a strength forged not in boardrooms but in late-night comfort sessions and relentless quiet sacrifice. He was rich in character, richer than any man she had ever known. As the dinner wound down, Emma instinctively started to rise, looking for a napkin to wipe a small smudge of soup she felt on her chin. The old habit of apologizing, minimizing her presence, and making herself small took over. Daniel reached across the table, his hand wrapping gently, commandingly around her wrist, preventing her movement. His gaze was intense, burning away the last vestiges of her self-doubt. Emma said, his voice deep and final. You don't need to apologize for anything tonight, not for being late, not for the mud, and certainly not for being yourself. You came here, you showed courage. That is the most beautiful thing about this evening. The fragile bubble of their intimate connection was violently popped. The group of loud, well-dressed men and women employees from a nearby corporate office where Emma sometimes served coffee entered the restaurant. They glanced over and instantly recognition flashed across their faces. One man who often left condescending notes instead of tips pointed and laughed rakishly. Hey, isn't that the little table scraper from the cafe our server? Look, she's on a date. Who'd have thought? The laughter was sharp and cruel, echoing in the now completely silent restaurant. Emma went white, her blood ran cold, and her hand shook so violently that the teaspoon she was holding clattered to the floor with a sound like a gunshot. She felt the mud on her dress reappear, felt the humiliation of her life laid bare. For this elegant, wonderful man, another woman from the group leaned in, her voice pitched to ensure maximum audibility. Does he know she lives in those subsidized apartments with people on welfare? She probably cleaned their room before coming here. That was the breaking point. Emma lurched up from her seat, a choked sob escaping her lips. I have to go. I'm so sorry. Daniel stood up, his body instantly and decisively shielding Emma from the crowd. He didn't just stand, he established a perimeter. He made eye contact with the restaurant manager, a man who knew exactly who Daniel Ross was, a major investor in the local financial district. Daniel gave a barely perceptible but ice-cold nod towards the offending group. The manager's face immediately paled and he rushed discreetly to the nearest security guard. Daniel's power was visible not in his clothes but in the immediate silent fear of the establishment staff. He was a wall of protection, tall and unmoving. He reached into his pocket and placed enough cash on the table to cover are their meals, and the waiters tipped tenfold. He didn't need to argue, he just needed to leave with dignity. No one here has the right to make her feel small. Daniel's voice rang out, no longer a request but an ultimatum. The group of colleagues, momentarily stunned by the display of unexpected class and decisive action, backed down. The group of colleagues stopped laughing, their faces registering a mixture of surprise and defiance. They started to snicker again, trying to regain control of the moment. Daniel took a deliberate step toward them, his voice dropped lower, becoming steel-edged and dangerous. I will only say this once. She is not alone now. You will apologize or you will leave. The silence that followed was absolute. The weight of his conviction, a man of clear authority if not visible wealth, crushed their mockery. Embarrassed and defeated, the group quickly scurried away, muttering apologies and pulling each other toward the exit. Daniel gently took Emma's arm and led her quickly out of the restaurant, away from the lingering pitying stares. The moment they were outside the door, Emma broke down, collapsing against the cold stone facade of the building, sobbing uncontrollably. I embarrassed you, I ruined everything, I should never have come. Daniel pulled her gently but firmly into a comforting embrace. He held her tight, letting her cry into his shoulder. When her sobs finally subsided, he shook his head strongly. You did the opposite, Emma. You made me incredibly proud. Emma pulled back, her eyes swollen and red. Proud of what? Of being mocked, of having my whole life exposed as a financial failure. Daniel placed both hands on her shoulders, forcing her to look into his eyes. Proud because you faced all of that tonight. Proud because you came back from the mud still determined to keep your word. That is integrity, that is class, that is true strength. You are braver than you give yourself credit for. He guided her over to a simple park bench under a street lamp. He took off his tailored coat, the same one he had used at the beginning, and wrapped it around her shoulders. Again, a ritual of protection. I grew up poor, Emma, he confessed, his voice dropping to a low rumble. Dirt poor. I know what that look, that patronizing tone feels like. I know the shame, but you do not deserve to be treated that way ever. Emma looked at him, truly seeing him stripped bare of the pretense of wealth and status. She was looking at a kindred spirit, a man who chose to stand with the marginalized, not against them. It was the first time she had ever felt unconditionally defended. Suddenly a small, brightly dressed girl came running toward them, escorted by a middle-aged woman. It was Lily, Daniel's friend, who had dropped her off after her ballet lesson as planned. Lily saw Emma's tear-streaked face and ran straight to her, wrapping her tiny arms around Emma's waist in a fierce, immediate hug. Daddy said you were a kind person. I like you, Lily exclaimed, her childish warmth instantly melting the tension. Emma couldn't help it. She started to laugh even as the tears continued to flow. Daniel knelt down, his eyes softening. As he looked at Emma, I wanted you to meet her. Emma, this is my life. I haven't introduced anyone to her in 7 years. The implication hit Emma like a physical force. He was serious. He saw a future with her flaws, mud, poverty, and all. Just then the group of arrogant CO workers cutting through the park shortcut walked past them again. Seeing Emma sitting with Daniel and a child, they paused, their confidence rekindled, ready for one last jab. Oh, the whole family's out for a stroll. Watch out, little girl, your new mummy might steal your allowance. One man sneered. Before Daniel could react, Lily turned around, her small face contorted in a ferocious scowl. She put her hands on her hips, channeling her father's earlier authority. Don't make my friend sad, Lily scolded, her voice piping high with righteous indignation. She's beautiful. The group froze, stunned into absolute silence by the child's unexpected defense. Daniel simply smiled, a proud, quiet triumph washing over his face. Emma pulled Lily into a tight hug, feeling the surge of love for the little girl who had instantly become her champion. She looked up at Daniel, her eyes full of disbelief in an overwhelming question. Why are you being so good to me? Daniel's voice was low, intimate, and utterly sincere as he met her gaze. Because you deserve it, Emma. If no one has told you that fundamental truth your whole life, let me be the one to tell you now. Daniel decided to steer the evening toward true, unpretentious comfort. He drove Emma and Lily not to another upscale venue, but to a small, brightly lit family-run diner, the kind of place where the food was cheap, the coffee was bottomless, and the welcome was genuine. The atmosphere was loud, familiar, and non-judgmental, a complete antithesis to the cold formality of the Blue Lantern. Emma was surprised to find herself laughing harder than she had in months. Lily, now completely comfortable, regaled them with animated stories about her school play and her imaginary pet dragon. Emma found herself naturally slipping into a parental rhythm, cutting Lily's pancake, wiping a smear of syrup from her cheek, and asking gentle leading questions about the day. Daniel watched the interaction across the vinyl booth. He saw the way Emma instinctively protected Lily's drawing from spilled water, the way she matched the tone of her voice to the child's imagination. A realization dawned on him. Emma was born to be a wonderful mother, a gentle nurturer who had simply never been given the chance. After the simple, heartwarming meal, Daniel drove them to a quiet spot by the city lake. The night was calm, the air clean, a profound contrast to the turbulence of the earlier hours. Emma broke the comfortable silence with a hesitant question. You know, Daniel, aren't you afraid of being judged, being seen with me, especially after tonight? People talk. Daniel turned, resting his elbow on the steering wheel, his gaze fixed solely on her. His answer was immediate, firm, and definitive. Anyone who judges you, Emma, is not worthy to be in my life. Their opinion is irrelevant noise. You are what matters. Emma felt her breath catch in her throat. That sentence, "You're what matters," was a foundation she could build a new life upon. They sat there for a long time, watching the city lights reflect on the dark water. The soft sound of the wind was a lullaby. Lily, exhausted from her eventful evening, leaned her head against Emma's lap, curled up like a kitten, and fell fast asleep. Daniel smiled, a profound, tender expression blooming on his face as he looked at the sight. "She trusts you completely," he whispered. Emma's voice was shaky, raw with emotion. No one has ever trusted me like that." "I do," Daniel replied, his eyes steady, unlinking. "I trust you, Emma." The hours passed in comfortable silence, punctuated only by the occasional sound of the city and the rhythmic breathing of the sleeping child. Emma felt a deep, peaceful exhaustion settle over her, the kind that comes after a long, meaningful battle. She realized that Daniel had not only protected her from the judgment of strangers, but from the judgment of her own internalized shame. He had given her permission to be herself, messy and unpolished, and declared her beautiful exactly as she was. This was the first place she had truly felt safe, secure, and seen. Daniel drove her back to her small, shabby apartment building. He walked her to the doorstep, the lingering smell of bus exhaust and damp concrete contrasting sharply with the warmth emanating from his tailored coat on her shoulders. He paused, his hand hovering near her cheek, his voice dropping to an ear silent plea. "Tomorrow, would you agree to see me